Welcome to Money Talk with Skylar Fleming, where talking about money is encouraged. Let's get talking. Welcome, Money Buddies, to this week's episode of Money Talk. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming, and this week we're going to be talking about paying for college. It's always a timely topic as it's something that's on people's minds a lot of the time, and someone is always thinking about it. So whether you're a student or a parent of a soon-to-be college student, this is something that you have to prepare for. So I'm hoping this episode is going to be an evergreen one that people can turn back to when they have questions about how to pay for college. Today we're going to be talking about some of the financial lies about college, payment methods for college for both students and parents, and some of them to avoid completely. This is going to be a great episode, so if you know anyone trying to think about paying for college, be sure to share this episode with them. I know I mentioned last week about some pipeline news for the podcast. I'll have some more updates in a few weeks, but expect the news in about a month from now. It's really exciting and I'm excited to roll it out. If you have any thoughts or comments on today's episode, or really any episode whenever you're listening to Money Talk, shoot me an email or leave a comment on Spotify or YouTube. But let's get on with today's episode. Today's Money Buddy is Shymika Davison. Shymika founded Pre-College Solutions, a college readiness consulting and coaching company. She earned her bachelor's at Northwestern State University and her master's in business administration from Texas Women's University, along with a certificate in nonprofit management and youth development. With nearly 14 years of expertise in college admissions, scholarships, and youth development, she contributes to outlets like Yahoo and Real Simple and co-authored You Can Go to College for Free. She has spoken at numerous college readiness conferences and summits, and she's here today to talk to each one of us about paying for college. And we're going to answer the question, is college unaffordable? But the money talking points for this week are, how does your job impact your financial situation? 2, what other options are available for education? And 3, what plan do you have to pay for college? With those money talking points in mind, let's get talking. Hello everybody, and welcome to today's interview on Money Talk with Skylar Fleming. Joining me today, I have Shymika, and we're here to talk about paying for college. Is it possible? Is it just outright too unaffordable for most people? Shymika, could you introduce yourself for everyone before we get into this great conversation?
My name is Shymika Davison. I am the founder of Pre-College Solutions, a college readiness coaching and consulting company based out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Our whole mission is to help everyone understand that college prep is financial literacy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's obviously a need for it because it's so complicated to pay for college. Like, why? I don't know why it has to be so complicated. It could be a lot simpler. At least it's not health insurance. That's a whole different ballgame. But to start us out, let's kick it off with some financial lies that you like to talk about. What are some lies that are persisted about finances in college?
Okay. So the biggest lie that I want to dismantle is that financial aid, the FAFSA, is going to help you pay 100% of your college education. And the way that the FAFSA is set up, or financial aid, it assists people who financially, on record, cannot pay for college. So if you are in a household where you're making maybe 75, maybe 100K plus in your household, most likely you're not going to be eligible for any financial aid grants, work study, things like that. Like, they're expecting that because you make that much money in your household, that you have it and that you're going to help your child or whomever pay for college. So that's the biggest one I want to kind of dismantle.
I think that's something people rely on, but if you do come from a house that is wealthier, or maybe not even super wealthy, but just does pretty solid with money and has a good foundation, the FAFSA might be a rude awakening for people who haven't done any sort of prep work. And I think we're going to talk about that today, about how people can prepare and get a little bit ahead of that so they're not surprised when the FAFSA doesn't cover everything. Do you have any other lies that people might need to consider?
Another one, this one is more towards the students. I want to say there's a myth, I call it the myth of the working college student, where a lot of students are like, I'm just going to work my way while I'm in college. Like, I'm going to work and I'm going to spend money to pay for college. Well, the reality is that most students who are working, those students most likely move off campus. They have all these additional expenses and things to do work now because they are bringing in money. So they may dress a little better. They may have just more daily expenses than the typical college student. And so they don't save all of that money, or the money they had mentally prepared to go towards tuition and fees. They use that just to live. Therefore, what happens is they still end up getting some type of loan or some type of assistance that they have to pay back, just like a regular college student who maybe doesn't have a scholarship and things like that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one to consider. It's like, are you working to have the privilege to work? Like, are you paying and getting an income just so you can go to work? What if you didn't need a car? That's a huge expense that a student may be able to avoid if they're living on campus, like you mentioned. I love that one. Any more that people need to consider? I think that one can be a huge deal.
I think that's one a lot of people don't think about because it sounds so realistic. Like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Of course you want a job. That's the whole point of college, right?
I want to say another myth that maybe a lot of students don't think about is my students who decide I'm going to join the military or I'm going to join ROTC while I am in college, and that's going to help me pay for college. And yes, that is true. They are going to help you pay for college, but you may be going to college later on in life. Like, you won't be going in the fall. Once I get this all the time. Once I go to boot camp and then I'm going to go to college, and that's not how the military is set up. There are trainings and things you have to do which could take years before you actually step on the college campus, or you may end up getting your college education on base at their universities and maybe not the ones you thought you'd be going to through the GI Bill.
Yeah, that could definitely be a big one, because if you're trying to go on this path where it's paid for or there's help from the military, even if you get deployed, your ultimate goal isn't to serve in the military in that capacity. College is the last thing you get to because you're in the military. That's a lot of great things to consider. Let's move into how people can pay for it as well. You've mentioned student loans. Those are obviously a big burden on a lot of people, but if people are trying to get ahead of it, how can a high school student or someone thinking about going to college begin to prepare to pay for it?
Okay, so there are about 7 ways that I tell people they can pay for college regardless of student loans. The first one is always going to be scholarships. Scholarships. I advocate that a lot. So we're going to push that to the side.
We'll come back to scholarships. They're a big deal.
The second way I would say is graduating early with an associate's. That is an amazing way to pay for college because now you've gotten 2 years out of the way, and depending on what you go to. Yes. And so now you only have 2 years where you have to figure out how to pay for college and things like that. So that's an amazing way. Another way is college entrance exams such as the PSAT. The exam is an exam where you can take a test as early as you're in high school. If you pass the test on these certain college subjects, then you get college credit, which means you don't have to take any college classes. These tests are extremely hard, and you really need to know these subjects. If you're organic chemistry and you want to take the CLEP, you have to know organic chemistry. Don't just be taking that test. And if you pass it, you have the college credit. You don't have to take that class in college. The PSAT, this is mainly given to sophomores, juniors of high school students. If you take this test, you will qualify for what is called being a national merit, which is one of the highest academic achievements you can have. Colleges will start throwing money at you to go to their school if you score well on these tests. Like, I know students where they know that everything's paid for their junior year if they decide to commit to certain colleges. So those are some for my high school students.
Yeah, those are a big deal. I want to speak to concurrent enrollment. That's those college credits you were talking about. I didn't take math in college because I was good at it in high school. Between those concurrent classes and AP classes, which you can also get credit for off those AP tests, those allowed me to skip math when people were struggling through it. I didn't have to worry. So if there's a subject where you're not a fan of and you don't want to take in college, consider doing well on it in high school, because it may be a little bit easier. It's still going to be difficult. I think that's the one thing, like you mentioned, these tests or classes aren't going to be a total cakewalk to get college credit, because it is still college credit. You're going to have to put in some effort, but those can be a huge time saver, because I think I only spent like 2.5 years worth of semesters in college because of these credits. This is a huge deal for anyone listening that's not in college yet, if you can get started with these earlier. Are there any other simple ways that people are overlooking when it comes to paying for college, or things they can do in college?
Carve out your niche while you are in high school. And so I know that's a marketing term, but It's true today. If there's something while you are in high school and it is your passion, it is what you can capitalize on. It may be that you are good at debate. Like you're the best debater at your school. You go to competitions and you debate, and now you're the best debater in your state. You can capitalize on that by doing scholarships, being recognized in your state for being the best debater and get scholarships for that. People would want to sponsor you. Believe it or not, there were people out there that want to support you. They just don't know you need the help. So that is another way to find out, hey, number one, do I want to go to college? Because that's a big thing right there. Going to college is the biggest financial decision a high school student will make. I hate that you're making these decisions at the age of 17 to 18 years old, but it's the biggest financial decision that you will make. And so that does not need to be taken lightly. Once you decide, yes, I do want to go to college, then you need to figure out what it is you want to do. That's why I go back to find your niche, because whatever your niche is, that's what you're passionate about, that's what you love, and that's what you should be invested in while you're in high school. Once you carve that out, I guarantee the money and the funds and things like that will come because people will invest in you, your passion.
Yeah, if you become good at something, maybe in high school you can start working at a company that does that, and then they offer a tuition program. My day job does that as well. If you're getting a degree in something that's advancing your area, they'll help pay for it. That's another thing that people could consider. Maybe you don't want to start college right out of the gate at 18 because you want to go get a job to make sure you know that's the area you want to go into, but then you also end up working with a company that's going to help subsidize your tuition. So there's a lot of great ways that people can look at paying for it that could be beneficial. One of the things people need to consider, like you said, it's the biggest financial decision we expect these 16, 17, 18-year-olds to make. Is it just outright unaffordable? Should it be avoided because it's too expensive?
Never, 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 never. Now, is paying for college right now just crazy and bananas? Yes. Since the 80s, the cost of tuition, the cost of being a college student itself has tripled. And so, yes, the cost is ridiculous right now, especially if you have parents that went to college and they're looking at your stuff and thinking about their stuff. It looks crazy right now. But yes, you should definitely go to college.
That's awesome. A thing that just came to my mind, and hopefully you have some thoughts around this, but what is the value of potentially going to maybe not one of the big name brand schools? Because I know you could get maybe those associate credits that you didn't finish up with in high school at a cheaper college. Is there value in that and potentially transferring around between programs?
Okay. So, yes, there is value in that. That is a lot of work as well. That is a lot of work. So, earlier when we were talking about AP classes and CLIP exam and things like that, not every university in the world accepts these if your goal is to attend the Ivy League school. A lot of Ivy League schools, they don't accept certain AP exam scores. They don't accept certain CLIP tests and all those other type of things. That's why I would, for affordability purposes, say you may look into an in-state university. Or if you don't plan on moving out of your state, like that's just something you already know in your heart, or you want to stay around your hometown, then yes, you need to be looking into that and staying in that area, because it is going to be low cost. It is going to give you more value.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You mentioned in-state. There's huge tuition differences between in-state and out-of-state. That's something else to look at. And I think the overall picture is that there are so many things you have to look at because this is a big decision. So you need to do some planning around it. Spend more than just like maybe your guidance counselor says the application deadlines are the end of April. Don't start it in the beginning of April. Start it at the beginning of the school semester or the year before, because there's so many things to consider. It's not a decision to take haphazardly or rush into. What are some payment methods that the students might hear thrown around that they may need to take a step back and wave a caution flag towards?
Student loans. Any person probably over the age of 25 who's been to college can probably give every high school student some type of story or scenario about just student. Everybody has a student loan story.
It's true.
Most of us do have some type of student loan story. I would say, if possible, try to make student loans be your last option. I think when I'm talking to students, when I'm talking to families, like it's always the first. Like, oh, if it doesn't work out, we'll just get student loans. And I'm like, no. Let's try some different avenues. Let's make that the final decision. So that's probably my big advice. Something to avoid if possible. And if you are going to get student loans, try to get a very small amount. If you're getting student loans through the government, they're only going to give you so much. I think a lot of people, because they're not familiar with this world think that I'll just get a student loan for $10,000. The government is not giving you a federal loan for $10,000.
Yeah. And the other thing to consider, my wife just recently graduated from PA school. So that is an expensive program, and student loans ended up being on the table. Grad plus loans are another thing that will drive me nuts, because it's crazy to me that graduate loans have worse terms than undergraduate loans in terms of subsidized interest and stuff like that. But that's a different story. And you can see as I'm starting to talk here, there's so many different terms I'm throwing out around student loans: grad plus, parent plus, subsidized, unsubsidized. All these different things you have to learn ahead of time so that you know how these loans actually work. And that's honestly why you want to avoid them till the last thing. Like, you want them to be the end of your financial payment methods so that you don't have to worry so much about all these different things. And then let's not even forget to drop the bomb on it of what's going to happen, forgiveness, like things like that just gets so confusing when it comes to student loans that you have to consider. I like the idea of making it the final thing in your payment method line.
I wanted to add one more thing to what you were saying, because I'm glad you talked about that, because people do tend to go back and want to go back to school and get an advanced degree, a master's degree. Studies show, the Department of Education data shows that most student loan debt comes from graduate students. Everybody thinks it's the undergraduate, but it's really student loan debt. That's where most of, no, I'm not going to say most, but recently, that's where a lot of the student debt has been coming from. And so students have to determine, yet again, making decisions when you're like super young, they have to determine if they're going to get loans for if they do decide to go get their master's or an advanced degree.
Yeah, and the thing to consider there too is if you already have that initial bachelor's degree, you're probably working, and that's what's made you think to go back to school. See if your employer will pay for it, even if it's not a documented benefit. They could run a pilot program with you to help pay for it. Or there's programs now where in place of a 401k match, some employers are doing a student loan match where they'll make a payment towards your student loans. There's a lot of ways to consider about how you can pay down these loans or pay for future college. But the thing that leads to so much debt is after you get that bachelor's degree, maybe you've started a family and then you want to go back to school. There's a lot more expenses on your life after you get out of college that you need to consider before going back to school.
You are correct. One thing I would like to add is that there's also something called an educational IRA, where let's just say you have a family and you're like, okay, right now I don't want to get my master's degree. I want to wait till the kids are 5 years old. You can put money to the side for what is called an educational IRA and have that money build up. And then in 5 years, pull that money out, use that to help pay for your graduate degree.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is there are options. There's financial planners, financial coaches, people like you that do consulting around this sort of stuff. Ask questions. I think that's the one thing I love to share on so many episodes is the people who are out here trying to share this content love to have questions asked their way. Please send them. If you have something come to mind, please send us a question. I do want to talk about scholarships real quick and share an experience story in a little bit. How can people get started with scholarships? I know there's websites out there. How can they get their foot in the door and actually begin that overwhelming process?
So the first thing I would say for someone who plans on applying for scholarships is that I want you to be realistic. There's a stat out there, I think it's from scholarships.com, that says for every 9 scholarships, it is likely for you to win 1. That I work with high school students and they think if they apply for 3 scholarships, they go win all 3. They're so heartbroken when they don't win any of them. They win 1, they just shut down and say it's pointless, I'm not doing it. And that's why I have to come in and encourage them, coach them to continue, because you don't see the end result until it's graduation time or the summer prior to going to college. And so that would be my first thing is you got to be realistic and you got to have the mindset that rejection is always going to be around.
But you're going to school for years, so those may come through later. You got to keep that train rolling. You can get a scholarship for later semesters. You don't have to have everything lined up before you even start in school.
So that would be my next line of advice. If you're a high school student, you need to be using that time as work on your academics. Most scholarships have a GPA requirement. If you don't have above a 3.0 or 3.5, you're cutting yourself right there, scholarships. So work on your academics, work on your GPA, your class rank, things like that. Freshmen, sophomore, they want to do scholarships right now. And I'm like, the best thing you can do now is to increase your GPA, get it to be the highest that it can be. So when you are applying for scholarships, that won't cut you off. The second thing I would say is, and this can go for parents as well, a lot of students, like I just said, when they do it freshman, sophomore year, I'm telling them that the bulk of scholarships for high school students are going to come senior year. What you could be doing is creating a Google Doc, creating some type of email, create your own scholarship list. Like you're a sophomore, but you're seeing scholarships available for seniors. Take that name of that scholarship, deadline, link, put it into a Google Doc. So then when you are a senior, you're like, hey, when I was a sophomore, I saw that this scholarship for $20,000. Let me go back now that I'm a senior and see when the deadline is. See if, I apply for those things and things like that. I would try to do that while I am a high school student. And then as a senior, go hard. Treat applying scholarships like it's a part-time job.
Yeah. Because if you win anything, you're going to make more money than a part-time job.
That's right, Scholar. That's exactly what I try to coach to the kids and the parents. You're going to make so much more money in scholarships if you treat it like a part-time job. I know people always hear about this student got $1.3 million in scholarships. We see these on social media and on TV. People are like, how did they do that? They treated applying for scholarships like it was a part-time job. They already had the backing. They had the GPA. They had a niche. They had the dream essay. Like they already had those things kind of already done. They wasn't doing that their senior year. They had that done before their senior year. So all they did was just pursue scholarships.
That's fantastic. And so often in the personal finance space, especially like the financial independence space, you hear everyone say, enjoy your life now. If a student does a little bit of planning ahead of time, they can still enjoy their high school experience without having to work a job or even spend all their time ever writing essays and submitting scholarship applications because they're ahead of the schedule. I really like your idea of if you find a scholarship that's for juniors or seniors, put it in that document because these scholarships are likely coming from a big investment fund that's paying yearly. So that scholarship isn't going to go anywhere. You just got to wait till it's your turn. One tip from my wife's experience in school, she had been writing scholarship essays for years. And this could even be somewhere for those freshmen to get started. Write your essays early. That way you can refine them and update them. My wife had quite a bulk of essays ready that we could submit to different ones. So when it came time to fill out these last batch of scholarships for her final couple semesters, we took all of those and plugged it into a tool. It's called Notebook LM. It's by Google. It's an AI tool. I'm not going to say have AI write your scholarship essays, but what Notebook LM does is it allows you to plug in different tools, resources, or sources, and then you can give it a prompt. We were able to take her 10, 15 essays that she had already written. This tool would take the prompt from the scholarship and compile all of those and pull stories that were applicable to that prompt. So it really helped us write an initial draft for these scholarships. We didn't use it as the final one and just submit that straight up, but it allowed us to get drafts started that were pulling from all these other essays that she'd been working on. There are technology tools to make this easier, but start writing those essays early and that can be a huge help.
This is something that I'm listening to Skylar talk and I want everybody to get this. He is helping his wife do scholarships. High school, parents of high school students, you need to be helping your child do these scholarships. Like, long gone of the days of they gonna figure it out, they got it. They don't got it. They don't have it at all. And so if you want to make sure that these kids are not coming to you every semester asking for money, you need to be able to support them in that type of way where it's like, hey, every Sunday, 2 to 4, we working on scholarships. I'm right here with you. Let's pull up the Google Doc. Let me proofread your essay. Let's pay for some services. So let's look for scholarships. Like, it needs to be a team effort because I'm pretty sure all of these parents do not want their child getting into any student debt. I'm pretty sure by Skylar and his wife working together as a team, they were able to conquer more together than if she was trying to do it on her own and also trying to just be a wife and a student and work.
Yeah, she was busy with school. She was in her clinical rotations. So I was able to take these essays, compile them, and almost write them for her based on her essays. And I was able to get drafts started. Then I had her review them. So yeah, maybe the parents can say, if you can put together, write these 4 or 5 stories, and then I'll help you brainstorm some ideas to convert it into a more proper essay. So yeah, I love the idea of helping there. And that moves us right into what I want to talk about, how parents can prepare. Because like you said, maybe they hire someone, which could be a whole lot cheaper than paying the tuition outright. I don't know how much someone in your position charges or these consultants, but I imagine it's a lot cheaper than full college tuition if you can find some scholarships. How can parents begin to think about college savings and paying for college in the future?
The first thing that I would tell all parents, especially the clients that I work with, is that you need to have the conversation with your high school students. You need to let them know that mom and dad do not have it financially. If you go to college, this is what we can do financially. This is what we cannot do financially. If you go to college, we can give you a small stipend for personal expenses. We can't do nothing else. You're getting off the DoorDash account. You will not be able to order DoorDash while you are in college. So parents need to have that authentic conversation with their high school students so that they can know that this is serious, this is a big deal. Because a lot of the ones I work with, my parents got it. I'm not worried about it. I get that so much. And then on the back end, I'm like, y'all need to talk to them because they think y'all got it. They really think y'all can drop $5,000 every 4 months. So y'all need to talk to them. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is, and I know parents probably hear this all the time, but it's called the 529 plan.
Yes.
I'm not against it. I'm not 100% for it. I have seen it work for some families and hinder some families. And for those of you, the 529 plan is just a college savings account that you can do on your own initiative. You can look into that in your own time. Parents, this is probably the best advice I give to parents. I call it the 2 for 2. For the first 2 years that your child is in college, I would tell my child, you are financially responsible for trying to figure out how to pay for college. I would tell them this while they were in high school. Not when they get to college. You are financially responsible for how you're going to pay for college. And that means that while they're in high school, they need to do scholarships. They need to be on top of things. They need to be putting themselves out there and figuring out ways to pay for college. Rather they're going to work, rather they're going to take AP exams to try to cancel out some of that. And also within those 2 years, you'll see if your child is even ready to go to college. Because what happens, I don't know if any of y'all know the statistics, but 33% of college freshmen drop out after their first year. And if you're a parent and you invested like $20,000 and your child just drops out because they said college just wasn't for them, that is a total loss. I'm pretty sure you'd be horribly upset. So that's why I try to tell parents, 2 for 2. First 2 years is on them. The last 2 years should be on you. You have seen the investment that they have put into going to college for the first 2 years. You should be putting money aside those 2 years that they are in college, and then you can be able to help them pay for college those last 2 years, because believe it or not, those last 2 years are the hardest years for them to graduate. To add financial burden, financial stress on top of academic stress is gonna mess with them mentally, and you don't want them to drop out and they have one more year left of college because they are just stressed out about how to pay for it, and they're just stressed out because they're a college student and life is hard for them at that point. So
I really like this 2 for 2 idea, because maybe it's even possible that these first 2 years the student gets used to finding scholarships, and maybe they've found some more that can continue to carry over into those last 2 years. And maybe if the parents have that money saved up, they can use that for a future home purchase or a down payment or a payment for a wedding, or helping them get into an apartment where they want to move to. So maybe that money could go somewhere else if the student has already built up this habit to pay for college themselves. I really like that idea because it puts the burden on the student in the beginning, which I would say my first couple semesters of college were infinitely easier than the last couple. Like you said, it does get way more difficult. And if you're able to create that trade-off where college is easier, you pay for it. As it gets harder, you don't have to worry about that stress. I really like that idea. I think that's something that people should seek to implement. The other thing, to your point about most people tend to drop out their freshman year, I remember when I was in college, and it was always that beginning of the fall semester, you had to wait about 2 or 3 weeks before parking got manageable, because there was all those freshmen that everyone knew would drop out in a couple weeks, and then all the parking spots would open up. If your freshman drops out and you put a ton of money into a 529, there's ways to get that out if they get scholarships and things like that. But there's penalties and fees if you're just taking it out because they didn't go to college. That's another thing to consider. You have to actually know if they're going to college and going to stick it out. I like that thought process. We mentioned student loans should be avoided for students. It should be that last thing in your line of payment methods. Is there something parents should avoid? Is it student loans as well? How should they think about paying for it?
Parents should definitely avoid the Parent Plus loan at all costs. Please try to avoid it all.
It's terrible.
It's so bad. It is so bad. It's so bad. I would say that try to avoid that at all costs. I mean, I understand if it's a last resort, it's a last resort, but please try to avoid that at all. My second thing would be parents. If you have multiple children and they're close in age and they all want to go to college, and they're like a year, 2 years within each other, I would say please try to avoid not having a plan. You need some type of plan.
And the plan can be having the student pay for it themselves because, like you said, just be realistic. Say, I can't do this. There's 4 of you and I can't throw out $20,000 every few months or more for each of you.
I had a gentleman, he was in IT, and I think he made 120, his wife made 84, and they had 6 kids. At one point, there would be 3 kids in college all at the same time. And he was asking me what advice could I give him to help kind of maneuver through that, because he was just like, we're still paying back on student loans. And he was like, our kids don't know that. They just see what we have. He was like, they don't know me and their mom are still paying for student loans on the back end. And he was like, I don't want that for them, but I also don't want them not to have the opportunity. The advice that I gave him was that he and his wife need to sit down and come up with some type of plan. Rather it's talking to their 3 kids and being like, hey, mom and dad would really like if you would consider community college first, maybe the first year. And then after that, we can see, we can invest in transferring into a 4-year university. I told them to make sure that as a young child that they're investing into what their child is interested in. Because what you don't want to happen is you got the oldest one in college, and then you got the second one. Second one don't know what they want to do. They just want to go to college because big bro, big sister saw it looking cool. And then they drop out. Just staying in college for 5 or 6 years until they finally decide this is what I want to do, and you're investing all this money into them. So I was just like, if you can help them figure out what it is that they love, they're passionate about, and just go hard and invest in that. And then on the flip end, make sure that all of your kids are doing scholarships. You have 3, all your kids should be doing scholarships. And I told them, I was like, don't worry about your salary. You have 6 kids. Once that gets divided down, on paper, it's not as much as it may feel like. You could be eligible for some need-based help.
Yeah, I love the overall picture of what I'm hearing from this episode of have a plan. College is a huge financial decision, and we can't just go into it saying, whatever, I'll figure it out. No, you need to have a plan ahead of time. And that's what I've learned from this episode. I hope everyone listening, whether you're a parent or a high school student, or whether you just got out of college and you're thinking now, how in the world would I ever send someone to college in the future? You have to have a plan for it. So start thinking about it today, start prepping for scholarships, start thinking about it for 20 years in the future if you're planning to have kids and want them to go to college. So there's a lot of planning that needs to go into it. Shymika, thank you so much for joining. I have 2 final questions here that we're going to wrap up with. One, how can people find you online? And then the last one after that is, what's one thing you wish you would have known about paying for college when you first started college?
You can follow me at LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok at Pre-College Solutions, or our website, precollegesolutions.com. If you're interested in the type of services and things we do, I would say our website is the best bet. One thing I wish I would have known about paying for college is that you don't have to have one way to pay for college. I went to college. My parents were very against student loans. They wouldn't sign off on any student loans. And because I was so foreign to it, I didn't even know that you didn't need them to sign. I just thought I couldn't get one. So I didn't get any student loans while I was in college. Because of that made me be creative. Like I worked during college, used that money to pay for a semester. I got an internship one summer. I used that money to pay for all of my senior year. My dad and my grandma paid for a semester. I was on financial aid. I had a scholarship the first year, then I didn't have any more scholarship money after that. So I got creative. I learned about the installment plans. Like you can get your tuition cut into monthly installments for that semester, but you have to pay it before the end of that semester or you can't register. So I learned all about this while being in undergrad and being able to go to college and graduate.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. I'm learning that there's plenty of options, and potentially ignorance to student loans might be a good thing. Just think they don't exist and figure it out otherwise, because it's probably a huge blessing that you came out without any student loans, because they're a huge debt on so many people and such a big problem. So that's fantastic. Shymika, thank you so much for joining. This has been an awesome conversation.
Thank you, Skylar.
Thank you so much to Shymika for coming on today's episode. And let's get into the money talking points here. That was a great interview. I know you all enjoyed it, so please make sure to share with a friend. But let's jump into the first money talking point. The first one is, how does your job impact your financial situation? Well, this is something we all really have to consider. Are you working just for the ability to get to work? This is a question I love to ask people. Are you working just to pay for the car that you feel like you have to get to work? If you didn't have to have the nice fancy car, do you even need the job you have, or do you have enough money to be financially independent? It's a great question to ask yourself. Are you working just to pay for your way to get to work? And is it this never-ending cycle of consumption and feeling like you have to work for all these other things because you're not considering the other options? So make sure you're considering how your money-making method is actually impacting your financial spending situation. Can you find a closer job that saves you more money? Even if you're getting paid less, is that trade-off worth it? Because I know, at least for myself, and I know for so many other people, commuting time is a huge drag on our mental load and our physical ability to do our job well, because it just sucks to commute hours and hours on end just to get to a job that is the reason you have to spend so much money on transportation. So consider the time and mental cost of a commute. Is your job impacting your financial situation in that way? But especially if you're in college, like we talked about today. An on-campus job may not pay great, but if you already live there, it may be a better deal than needing a car or needing to pay for transportation to get off campus to go to a job that only pays slightly more than when you consider the transportation costs maybe paying you less or maybe paying you the exact same. So make sure you think about these sort of things when it comes to your job, whether it's impacting your financial situation or your college situation. Think about your commute. Is it draining you? Consider biking to work to save a ton of money. Is there a way you can work closer to home? And also, back on that biking note, many people don't understand or realize the mental benefits that come from biking. It's a great way to exercise. Now you're not having to spend money on a gym membership. There's a whole lot more benefits that come from biking to work. And consider, for college or your job if you're not in college, would a pay cut in favor of a closer, easier to get to job actually be better in terms of time and travel expenses? So how does your job impact your financial situation? Is it making you spend more money just for the ability to get to work? This is a great money talking point. Please go and discuss this with your friends, because I like this one a lot. I love to challenge people on this idea. Is there a way you can commute differently to work to save mental strain, to save money? Or can you find a closer job that's going to save you money because you're not paying so much for transportation just to get to and from your thing that's making you the money to pay for the transportation? And I hope you can see the cycle and the picture that I'm trying to paint here with this first money talking point. But make sure to consider the question, how does your job impact your financial situation? But that does it for the first money talking point. And now that we all understand a little bit better how our job impacts our situation, let's talk a little bit more specific about education, which was today's topic. The second money talking point is, what other options are available for education? And this is where I have to plug things like certificate programs or trade schools, because they're becoming more and more popular, and for a very good reason, because you may not need a college degree. Your employer may have a program that can help train you or earn more certificates towards your work. Don't feel locked in, especially if your employer offers these programs. Do be aware of the fine print of any program where your employer pays for a program for you. They're very likely going to require you to put a little bit of that effort and education back into the company that paid for it, because they're paying for it. And that's completely reasonable. It's a great benefit to expand your options. And then in a couple years after you've paid your time back so that the company can get that return on their investment in you, it still expands your options, because now you're certified, you have more training. You might not have to go back to college for a full MBA or a master's degree or anything like that. You might be able to just spend a couple years earning certificates that are very specific to the career that you've realized you want to do, and you may not need a big fancy college degree. So consider certificates to further your bachelor's degree if you already have a bachelor's, or if you don't even want to get a bachelor's. Certificates are still a great option, and they can be a whole lot cheaper. And your work is even more likely to pay for them if they're only a couple $100 here and there versus thousands of dollars over multiple semesters. So getting those certificates and considering other options for education can be a big deal when it comes to furthering your career and moving up the career ladder at different companies or within the same company you're working for. It can also be super helpful when it comes to maybe leaving your job and doing something on your own, because you have those certificates that you've been working on. You have that real world experience that you've been doing over the past few years working at your job. And while college can be a long and grueling process, especially those general requirements that can be super boring and honestly a complete waste of time, I had to take a physics class in college and I don't remember a darn thing from it. And it was a complete waste of my time. Whereas a training certificate program can help you skip that stuff that you don't need to do. And you can go straight for the certificate in the thing that you want to do. So I love to recommend people consider trade schools, consider certificate programs. But that's the second money talking point, is what other options are available for education. If you know someone that's going back and forth on going to college, pose this question to them, send them this episode and say, hey, college can be very expensive. What other options are available? So that's the second money talking point. Let's move on to the third money talking point now. The third money talking point is, what plan do you have to pay for college? So you've listened to the last two money talking points, and now you're here on the third one saying, I am going to college. I need to figure out a plan to pay for it. What am I going to do? The first thing is, just like you said to yourself right there, I need a plan to pay for it. You have to have a plan. This is such a large expense that you can't just wing it. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Your plan could be student loans, though I would highly suggest looking at anything else first. If you didn't notice, we did not talk super highly about student loans in today's episodes. They're dangerous, confusing, and frustrating to so many people. Just the other day, my wife's student loans, we set them up on autopay because there's an interest rate discount if you set them up on autopay. However, this autopay didn't process like normal other autopays. It didn't update online on the date that it said it was going to process. There was no pending. There was no payment in process status online. It just looked like the loan was late. So for several days, I've been stressed because this autopay didn't seem to work correctly. And then thankfully, after the weekend ended, I saw the money come out of the account. So I'm like, okay, something is happening. My student loan administrator is not doing a great job at telling me anything is happening. And that's just undue stress that these student loans maybe don't need to cause you if there's other ways for you to pay for college. And let's not even forget the other headaches, the Department of Education changes potentially coming, forgiveness, no forgiveness, who knows what's going to happen there? Do you trust there will be forgiveness? Do you ever expect it? No. There's a whole lot of things with student loans going on that make it dangerous, confusing, and frustrating, like I said. And debt isn't always the answer, but avoiding it isn't always the answer as well. There could be a good use case for student loans. Like in the situation with my wife's education, her physician assistant program was very expensive and we weren't going to be able to afford that. However, because of our planning, we were able to come out of that program with a whole lot less debt than so many other people in the program. So you absolutely have to make sure you're planning, both as a parent, if your child is looking to go to college, or as a student, if you're looking to pay for college yourself. As a student, you may need to get a job, but remember that first money talking point. Remember the location of your job and the other expenses that are related to the privilege of having a job, and factor those into your salary. If you're a parent, the more time you have on your side, the better. Investing options like a 529 can be useful, but they're not perfect, just like every other tool. But if you have time on your side, investing can be a great way to pay for college because of that growth and compound interest over 10, 20 years, or however long you might have. So make sure you consider those options to pay for it ahead of time by pre-funding with some investments. But make sure to know what you have available. This would be a great time to have a money talk with me. Head over to moneytalkwithskylarfleming.com/chat. And I'd love to have a free quick money talk with you to talk about some of your college payment options. So schedule that free time and let's talk about ways that you can pay for college. But that does it for the money talking points today. I hope you enjoyed them. I also hope you can take them and have a money talk with someone else in your life that's thinking about paying for college. So be sure to share this episode and go out and have a money talk. But let's wrap up today's episode next. Thank you for listening to this episode, and thank you to Shymika for coming on and talking about paying for one of the largest expenses that so many people take on very early in their life. This is a huge decision that needs some real and serious thought given to it. There's a lot of different options out there, including potentially not going to college, which could be a huge time saver and money saver for people. I know people who do very well in trade work, and they may or may not have a college degree, but either way, they probably don't need it. In my job and with this podcast, I've learned a lot from YouTube and online courses that have helped further my education without having to get more and more fancy degrees. Either way, you can learn a lot both inside and outside of the college realm. But if you're going to go to college, you absolutely have to figure out a way to pay for it, and it's not something to take lightly. But thank you for listening to today's episode. The best way to stay up to date and connected with all things Money Talk is to subscribe to the podcast and sign up for my email list. Head over to moneytalkwithskylarfleming.com and submit your name and email right there on the homepage. You can also use the contact page on my website to send me any questions you might have. And if you're looking to get started with budgeting, I have partnered with my budget coach. a platform that connects your budget directly to your financial coach. And I'd love to work with you over there and help you with your budgeting. The link, of course, is in the show notes. Remember, the best way to learn from today's episode is to go out and have a money talk about today's topic with a fellow money buddy. But thank you for listening to this week's episode of Money Talk. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Money Talk with Skylar Fleming. This show is provided for informational and entertainment purposes and may not be specific to your unique situation. Please be sure to do additional research before making any financial decisions.